taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast, your source for news, leaks, and insights about games and the gaming industry. It is Wednesday, December 18th, and I'm here, as always, with Cyberpunk.
Hello, Captain.
So I've never been called that before.
Yeah,
that's a new one. So, yes, local brain in a jar Cyberpunk is here, aspiring Starship, not Starship Captain, but literal consciousness
Actual
uploaded
starship.
into a Starship Cyberpunk.
Like, think Battlestar Galactica, except just without all the pointless circular drama.
Mm-hmm. And I, of course, am your top Protectron Ashenity here with you as well. All right. Going to be talking a lot of Star Wars today, speaking of starships and such. We've got some news about Jedi Fallen Order. We're going to be discussing Rise of Skywalker reviews and, everything that's coming out of that later on.
Speaking of that, I just want to say, so there's this cinematic masterpiece that I got to see just a little bit ago. And I got to say that I know that there's been some consternation and back and forth on it, and people kind of giving their opinions on it, and there's some disagreement amongst fans. And I say it's perfect. I say it's great. In fact, I don't think there was any other way that they could have introduced time travel in the Rick and Morty universe than doing it for the Christmas holiday kind of thing, and have it be such kind of like a meaningless sort of like side nod at, a bunch of other sci-fi time travel tropes. I think that works. So you thought I was mentioning something else? No. This latest episode of Rick and Morty was absolutely brilliant. And I know, again, some people are really kind of upset about the whole, like, oh, they promised they wouldn't do time travel. It's like, but they did it really well, I think. And I really thought it was kind of funny the way that they ended that. So no, I'm okay with that. As for Star Wars, it's a hot steaming pile of, let me tell you. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're gonna be discussing the reviews. We're not gonna be going too in depth into what people are specifically saying.
No spoilers. No
spoilers about. I mean, we haven't seen it. Lots of leaks out there, many of which have been proven true. But we're not going to be discussing spoilers. We're just going to be talking about the reviews in general and how this relates to cinema reviews as a whole, because this is very puzzling. There's some puzzling things going on. We'll get into that in a minute. But first, there is some evidence that there may be a Jedi Fallen Order sequel in the making. Jedi Fallen Order, Respawn's most recent game, a really good Star Wars game, and which surprised a lot of people because it is from EA, and EA owns Respawn. It spawned from a game that Respawn was working on before EA acquired them, and when they started working on it, it wasn't actually even a Star Wars game. It was something else, but then it became a Star Wars game, and it became, in my opinion, and in the opinions of a lot of people, a very good game. Not a perfect game, definitely room for improvement, but a good game. It sold incredibly well. And so now we're left with EA. It's EA's call what they're going to do next. Are they going to continue along that road and say, okay, maybe people do actually enjoy single player narratives still, which is obviously true, and the fact that they even questioned that was utterly absurd. Or are they going to double down on just doing live services and ridiculous monetization? Well, there are some job postings for Respawn Entertainment on EA's website that are suggesting that maybe they're going in the other direction and saying, yeah, you know what, maybe let's do a Jedi Fallen Order 2 or a sequel. It's also possible that this is for expansions or DLC for the first game, but I'll let Cyb comment on that. But here's what's up on the EA website. So they're looking for a senior software engineer for the Star Wars team for Respawn. And it says, we're looking for a highly skilled senior software engineer who will embrace our philosophy and share his or her hard-earned expertise to create an incredible Star Wars experience for our players. We're picturing someone who is passionate about the Star Wars universe and is invigorated by the idea of coding third-person action-adventure games. So, the wording in this sounds single-player-ish.
Sounds very interesting. I've been reaching out to sources still for the whole EA thing, just seeing where they're at, seeing where their heads are at. So there's definitely a split between some staff and the upper elite, and even supposedly one or two of the upper elite of that company, in that they think that this whole Fallen Order thing has actually improved the overall their overall reputation, and they're not against doing things that they think that. And this is the stupid thing, right? This is why EA is a cancerous company that needs to die. And that is that they look at this and they say, gee, it sure has made us given us a lot of like positive vibes in amongst the community, and we're not hated nearly as much as we were recently. So I suspect that there's a good chance that maybe we should do this again, and that this will net us even more positive things while we continue to do all of the dirty things that they're doing with the rest of the company. However, there's also been an argument that one of their biggest sales bumps for the Star Wars Battlefield 2, or Battlefront, sorry, not Battlefield, Battlefront 2, was the introduction of lightsabers into Fortnite. So really, they're just trying to like chase more like Fortnite nostalgia and stuff, and trying to connect in with the big, things. It's kind of funny. Biggest bump for Battlefront 2 was given to them by a competitor who was launching something that they had no hand in. Again, it seems almost as if EA, maybe your company runs better when nobody in your office does anything, and certainly doesn't plan for anything. I mean, it just appears as if you guys are so bad at your job that the best job you do is when you don't check in. Have you thought of that? Have you realized the insanity and the stupidity of what you are doing, in that you're so dumb and bad at your job that not showing up and not having anything to do with any of these projects is what actually sells the most of the majority of your products?
That is really bizarre.
Just me. It's so bizarre.
I don't think it's just you. I think a lot of people would be happier if EA didn't show up to do it. If they just kind of were like they did with the Respawn, or what they claimed to do for Apex Legends, and what they actually it's seemingly have done for Jedi Fallen Order, which is just don't interfere. Let the studio do its thing. Let them do what they're good at. You guys over there in the corporate tower, you do what you're good at, which is sitting around and shelling out money, basically.
Right? It's
bizarre. But anyway, so they are looking for a senior software engineer, and it doesn't specify anything about multiplayer. And for a software engineer, if they're looking at coding a multiplayer game, they'd be looking for somebody with multiplayer experience. That's nowhere to be found in this job interview, not even under the sort of preferred assets kind of a thing. But there's two other job postings. They're looking for a level designer for the Star Wars team. A level designer who will create levels from concept to final stages of polish, facilitating communication and coordinating departments to ensure vision is understood, etc., etc. Strong design sensibilities who can invent and execute. So, level designer, again, I mean, it doesn't mention anything about multiplayer experience in here that I've been able to see, and just the term level designer, that also sounds single player-ish, narrative sort of, narrative driven game where you go on missions. from.
It can, yeah. So, I mean, uh, I wouldn't necessarily throw everything on just that one particular thing, but it's the fact that,
No,
as
it's
you're
not a.
pointing out, it's all of these things at the same time,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
So it's not a
it
slam
yeah.
dunk, but yeah, it definitely sounds like they are, looking for. They're
Mhm.
looking to create another single player game in with the Star Wars team. They're also looking for a senior character artist.
Yeah. We've been seeing a lot of this kind of stuff. Yeah, when
What's that? Oh, sorry. I
excuse me,
think.
I had to sneeze. um, I think we're seeing a little bit of this here and there in that some studios have people um, who are quite adamant that they have to get back to making good games in order for them to sell things, right? And that everything else is kind of just a flash in the pan. And sure, you can have people wail out and do that, but the progress of that has been getting smaller and smaller as the market for that kind of stuff, as more and more people are whale farming. It just means that there's going to be less and less whales that you can catch on one particular thing, um, and that's not good. So I think what we're seeing a handful of people in places that are pushing back in interesting ways because they can't just push back, right? And we're doing an investigation into another company, into another very well-known issue that has been in the gamer's mindset recently. And what we're finding is that there are people who are 100% opposed to this culture of whaling and treating the players like a farmable resource that they don't give two craps about. And we're finding out that the first thing that we encounter is that none of these people are allowed to speak. It's not that they're not allowed to speak and they be disciplined or whatever. It's that it's been made clear by people who are very, 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 very powerful. I cannot put that into um, any less terms. Like I don't know how to emphasize this. The people that are behind some, not all, some of these choices in the past like 10 years are people who um they just had a dear friend of theirs pass away in a prison through something, um and of course nobody can investigate it because wink wink nudge nudge, if you catch what I'm meaning. This was their buddy. Okay, so just so we're letting everybody know the power dynamics of what's going on here. This was their buddy. This is not speculation. This is well known. This is absolutely well known. There's photographs, tons and tons of basic information. I'm not saying that these people are bad or did anything that this one fellow who was in prison did. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm pointing out is that they were friends. Okay, so this is the world that these people are in, and I mean it's big money, big business, that kind of thing. But you don't just do the 180-degree different thing that they want without repercussions. Now, yeah, I'm not suggesting that some of these people are going to, be, disappeared in the middle of the night. What I'm suggesting is that some of these people, unfortunately, um, suffer from the suffer from a series of difficulties when speaking out about this, whether it's professionally or whether there is actually goons showing up to say stuff. We've seen some really disturbing stuff this year, and I know this is kind of it's I'm talking in a lot of code, and I understand that there's some confusion here, but what we've discovered is that the people that are in the industry that are fighting back against this have to do this in interesting ways, and that some of them are doing this through ways that seem from the outset you'll look at them and say, these people are terrible. I hate these people. They're ruining stuff. But on the inside, what I'm being told, and strategically looking at it, is that some of these people have no choice, and that they have to make things worse before they can get better. That as a whole, things have to kind of come apart at the seams before they'll call in a seamstress. If you're catching what I'm laying down. And again, I know and I don't like being, too cloak and dagger every once in a while, but I thought it was really relevant for this particular thing, and the fact that we might be getting somewhere with this investigation. And should we have some information come out, just so that you guys who listen quite often are prepared to kind of like sift through because we can't just drop this stuff straight up out there. We have to do it in a way that's a little bit different. And I hate being like that, but it's true. It's unmistakable. It's like if you speak against some of these people, as we've already seen, it's like YouTube channels will just disappear literally overnight. Hit with 100 and some odd takedown orders in a single moment. And I mean, even if you could fight half of them, you still have over 50 of them left, right? So I'm winking and nodding a lot, and I know you can't see that. And again, I know it's kind of people hate this sometimes, but people at EA, there are people at EA, not at EA proper, I would say, but people at companies that make games, because EA doesn't make games. They make cat food or dog food, stuff with fillers that just make the animals addicted to it, and they make it so that they just pump out as much crap as they possibly can. And that's kind of the thing. But there are other people, good developers at DICE, for example. There are some good developers that are left at BioWare. There's not a whole lot of them, but there are enough that can affect change. And in order to change the status quo, they have to do drastic and sometimes confusing things, and they can't just come out and say what they want to say. They can't just come out and say, I really disagree with microtransactions and the predatory nature of them. These people can't say that. Not only will they be fired, they will be banned and blacklisted from the very thing that that they've been doing all their life. They'll have to find a new job, like a whole new industry to get into, or they'll have to try and build one out of scratch. And every step of the way, they're going to be blackballed and run over and, forcibly put down. There have been games that we've been looking forward to for the last 10 years or so that within I'm not saying all of them are 10 years old. It's just within the last 10 years, I've seen several games, several things, several creators come up with contents, idea, games, concepts, that kind of stuff that are having a very hard time getting anything done. They will routinely put out calls for hiring. People will apply. Then when they accept the position, they'll suddenly call up and say, I'm sorry, I can't accept this position. Something's come up. I can't come in. When that's happening to 80% of the people that you're hiring, there's something working against you. There's something calling these people up saying, hey, if you take this position, you're never going to work at any other company ever again. And that's daunting for somebody who has student loans to pay back. And so this is the kind of stuff. It's not just, somebody getting mad at you from a corporate office. It's everything hitting you from every direction, and directions that you never even thought possible. So that's kind of what goes on in the gate, in any kind of corporate world. This is the same thing that goes on in car industries. And this is one of the reasons why it's so hard to effectuate change in the car industry, is because, well, if you come up with a way to make a car at 1/10 of the cost of current cars, and it's twice as safe and twice as fuel efficient, that puts a lot of people out of jobs and threatens the very stability of certain markets and certainly certain cities. And all of these people will, have a reason to come after you, or somebody will come after you for that kind of stuff. So in this case, what we're seeing is we're seeing some good developers, and there are still some of them left at companies that a lot of people have written off, that are trying to do the only thing that they can do, which is try to effectuate change in the ways that they can. And that's not always clear, and it's certainly not very easy. So, that's kind of where we're at. And again, I know I apologize for being overly cryptic and whatever, but it's it's something that I've been wanting to mention for a while. So ideas are good. These concepts are growing. There is pushback growing, and the markets are slowly starting to favor this kind of stuff. The Fallen Order really has put the idea and the concept that this is something that is what people want back on the table. And we will see more of this kind of stuff coming from studios that a lot of people have assumed aren't doing this anymore. And we will be seeing that in 2020 coming up. This is another reason why I brought this up now. That we're going to be seeing this stuff. And, we're going to have our investigations. We're going to have our videos and some live streams covering this stuff in the future. But there is change from not only the new people, because, and I haven't really mentioned like new studios, indie studios, there's so many of them that are affecting real change. It's ridiculous. There's a lot of studios that I'm in fairly constant contact with that have been doing some amazing stuff in very small teams that big companies are starting to notice and go, maybe this is something that we should be paying attention to. And this is, I think, really important that I've always said that, real change comes from the indie developers, from people who have new ideas, who are not, they want to reinvent the wheel. And thankfully, we have some companies like cdpr who do that on the regular basis, and they're not willing to conform to, to status quo. But we also have, here going forward, we also have, more of that kind of stuff coming from the older developers as well. Again, not from the corporate head, but from key positions of people working from within to say, look, this has to change. This has to alter. This has to, courses have to be reset and moved and calculated into different directions. And again, it's very confusing. It's very daunting. It's daunting for us to kind of cover this content. I can't imagine what it's like to just be somebody who enjoys games, trying to like keep track of everything, and is like, wait, so and so is not an evil jackass who's out to ruin my childhood. Well, no, they're actually doing the only thing they can do. It's either that, or they make a singular verbial stand, then get sued into the ground and never work in the industry again. And it's like, they have kids. If you were by yourself and if you were like a pirate, it's easy to say, well, screw you and burn every bridge that you've had. It's quite another thing when you have, family that needs, they need you to be making money and having something. Now, you might be able to do that when you're old and you're about to retire. That's an option too, right? But it's not something that you can just always just snap your fingers and jump in. So some people have to be a little bit more cunning in their reaction. If you don't think that that's successful, well, there are certain companies that have lost several $1 billion this year just because one or two people have been cunning. So that hurts a whole hell of a lot more than, if they had come out and just made a statement, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Manny Calavera says, I will believe it when I see it. Fallen Order is still a one of by a AAA. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that these companies are changing overnight. I'm saying that there's people within some of these companies, and like EA is a good example, because you have the corporate structure of EA, and then you have these minor studios that can effectuate change on a different level. And yes, EA as a whole is still, I think, very corrupt. They're doing things that are absolutely predatory, and it's absolutely unacceptable. However, there is other things, right? There is other ideas and other concepts that are coming. So
Mm-hmm.
so
And
I,
yeah,
I
we will
understand.
see.
I
I mean,
understand the concern. Really, I do.
definitely keep that skeptical mind. We would never,
Mm-hmm.
ever.
No.
Part of why we call this critical gaming news, um, the Augmented Reality podcast. Not just critical in the sense of, we try to cover the most important things that we think you're going to find interesting. It's also because we want to assess it critically, and we want you to think critically as well. And so absolutely keep that skeptical mind when it comes to all of this. We are not going to start shilling for EA.
No.
Or any studio.
No, the only thing I'm suggesting is don't look at everybody at these companies and assume that they're all in the same boat, that they all have the same ideas. Some of these people at some of these companies, and there are a handful of people, and I'm talking about a particular situation now where there's one person who's gotten a lot of flack from the community, and what we have discovered is it seems to be that they are trying to effectuate change the best way that they can, but they're fighting against something that is so insidious that it's a little bit scary that somebody could have this level of power and control over something that, again, when you're looking at this, most people are like, no way they can have that much power. But even when you lay out the facts, you're like, well, I mean, that's crazy, and yeah, that's a lot, but I can't believe it. I can't believe it. You'd think that it's impossible, and and there's a and it's like I said, it's not something that you just snap your fingers and say, oh yeah, no, that's easy. It's like this is tough, this is hard. But I think what we're going to be seeing is that we are going to be seeing more games like Jedi Fallen Order coming out of DICE, and there's a potential that we might see some recovery as far as BioWare goes. I always confuse those two companies. BioWare, I don't actually confuse them. I just mix up the names all the time. BioWare is trying really hard. I don't know if it's enough. If you were to ask me to give an immediate reaction, I'm going to say the company's doomed. Like that's my immediate reaction. So no, company's doomed. There's nothing they can do at this point. It's just not going to happen. Like that's kind of where I stand a little bit on it, but that's not totally where I stand on it. That's like part of me hopes, has a little bit of hope that they can turn the ship around, but like right now I'm like, I don't know. And this coming from somebody who's talked with a lot of people in the company and heard what they've all had to say, and I know that there's people who are trying to effectuate change there, and they're really not getting close. So that's at least last time I
they're
talked.
they're fighting an uphill battle.
Oh, it's
But
uphill in every sense of the word.
we've been saying for years now that gamers need to vote with their wallets, and Jedi Fallen Order sold really well. We voted with our wallets on that one, and now as just to bring it full circle here, looks like there may be more either more content for the first game or possibly a sequel game coming down the pipe. And so,
and I gotta say, I think one of the biggest flags to that Jedi Fallen Order has done well is that it ended up as a meme on South Park. So there you go.
Well, you've made it when. So there you go. So possibly some good news for the future there. We'll see. I don't have much hope for EA reforming as a company, but will this at least let Respawn, or will this at least cause them to let Respawn sort of do its own thing and continue its formula for success? Maybe.
Yeah.
And that's all we can say is maybe right now.
I think again, Dice, Respawn, or what's left of Dice, I should say, um, Respawn, and what's left of Bioware. There's all kinds of people there that are trying,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like, again, you can look at the corporate structure and you can condemn the whole of the corporate structure and all of its subsidiary companies 100%, but just know that there are some people that are in those companies that are still trying to do what they feel is right, and what they feel is right is to not be predatory, is to make what gamers want them to make, and to not be over political, or to be aggressive in their treatment of certain fans, and that kind of stuff, because they see the most important thing to do is to just make good games, and that's something that so many companies have forgotten.
Yeah.
So
All right, we got to move on here.
yeah.
So the reviews for Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker are coming in, and it's very, very interesting. Very interesting. By the way, slam that like button if you haven't already. That definitely helps us out. Tells YouTube that you appreciate this content. So a lot of people have been worried about Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. So yeah, the screening versions of the movie have released now, and the critics have seen it, and they're giving their reviews, and it's not looking good. It's getting very, very mixed reviews, which, when you're talking about the access media shills of their corporate reviewers and that kind of a thing, that's basically a movie getting trashed. So that tells you something. But I want to point out something very interesting about this. By the way, I do want to address a comment we got earlier. Somnolence says, I disagree with discussing the reviews in the podcast so soon. Let people that want to watch it form their own opinions. I mean, that is totally fair. We're not going to be giving our opinion on it, of course, because we have not seen it. But we're going to be discussing what is being talked about and looking at some interesting numbers. And that's what I find most interesting about this, is when you compare these numbers to other movies, there's something interesting comes to light. It's getting, like I said, from the actual sort of, what would you call it? Official critics, like the
Yeah.
Career critics, the people that make their living writing movie reviews.
Yeah.
It's getting very average scores. The Rise of Skywalker on Metacritic, it's got a score of 53. The user scores are not available yet because the movie's basically not released yet. But on Rotten Tomatoes, the aggregate reviewer score is 57%, which is it gives them that green splat instead of the nice ripe tomato.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very average. So there's a couple of very interesting things here. By the way, for comparison, on Metacritic, The Last Jedi, Episode 8, has an 85, and on Rotten Tomatoes, The Last Jedi has 91%. That's the critic consensus. Meanwhile, the audience score of The Last Jedi on Rotten Tomatoes is 43%, and the audience score on Metacritic is 44%. So a huge, huge variance there, which we're starting to see more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the critics gave The Last Jedi an 85 and a 91, and they're giving The Rise of Skywalker a 53 and a 57, respectively. So what does this mean? I see two possibilities. And Saib, feel free to jump in whenever you want here. Possibility one is that this movie is so terrible that the shill media critics just have no way to even say anything positive about it. That's possibility one, is that it is so bad that it's getting, way lower critic scores than The Last Jedi did. And The Last Jedi, of course, was one of the most controversial and divisive movies, and was just like the user scores, the viewer scores are bad. So that's possibility one. What do you think about that, Cyb?
It's very possible, especially when you like. There's a whole bunch of media companies, and because we met and spoke with someone in this. We actually had a breakfast meeting with them where they're not allowed to allow they're not allowed to give a negative um, they're not allowed to allow a negative opinion to hit a certain point, like they're like straight up numbers. If you're a preferred, air quotes, if you're a preferred reviewer to the company, your stipulation is that you're not allowed to give any score lower than a 7 out of 10 or whatever equivalent that is. That you're not allowed to be below 70% because they want all of their critical reviews to be 70 and above at the absolute minimum. And that even if you were to give several movies 7 out of 10 in a row, that your access is going to be terminated based off of the fact that you're not, quote unquote, a team player. So this is immediately what I kind of see is that if the middle of the road people are really giving this a 7 out of 10, they're trying to save face to the fans who are going to be very negative, who are going to be very angry at this, who are going to be looking at this and saying, why do these people insist on ruining, something that we love? And that you, as a reviewer, as a critic, are now untrustworthy because you don't agree with the masses. This is the how many if like 50th, 60th, 70th, 100th time that these movies have been scrapped. I was kind of going back and looking at some movie people, looking at Alien and I guess the original Alien movie, and looking at the reviews that some of these people gave, and I think it was Siskel and Ebert. I think it was Ebert, the bigger, shorter guy. He said that the original Aliens movie was frightfully terrible. His first review was very positive. He gave another review a couple of months later, and he just kind of trashed it. And this is a kind of a hidden thing that not many people know about. But yeah, he trashed that movie. He really said, it was uninspiring. It was just a bottle episode, basically. Blah 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 blah. Like lots of stuff. And it's like, well, the fans don't agree with you, but the fans have never agreed with the critics. Critics will come out and say, "Oh, this is the best thing for only the best people," and the fans will unanimously say, "No, we like this." And then usually at some point, somebody will it usually happens when the person gets up there in power and control and access, and they start doing things that are giving them power in that kind of, then suddenly all of their work is acceptable and indeed groundbreaking. You'll take the same people from dealing with, and again I think it was the special effects guy. I'm pretty sure it was the special effects guy. It might be the director of Alien, or it might be both. When they made Alien, the original one, they're panned as these weirdo, because they were pretty young back in the time, and they were these up and comers, and they were talked about as being just not, sure, they had some good stuff, but they're really not, they're really not groundbreaking. The same people 20, 30, 40 years later, when suddenly these people are at the height of Hollywood, will say, oh my goodness, they were just always so inspiring. And this is something that you hear from a lot of actors. If you spend time with actors, you'll hear this a lot. It's like, oh yeah, met this person originally when they saw my first piece of work, and they said, oh, you just keep trying. You're not. It wasn't very good, but keep trying. whatever, just snooty nose up in the air, just absolute arrogance towards them. Then they go ahead like 10 years and they're accepting major awards and stuff like, oh, I always believed in you. I thought that original piece of work was marvelous. It's like, no, you told me it was crap to my face. Several times, in fact. No. I was just encouraging you to get better. It's like, this is the fakeness that is these movie critics. And it really is, because they've never lined up on a series. They'll say, oh, you don't like, such and such. Well, it's like, no, really enjoyed Alien. So, Alien 2, Alien 3, like all these movies, really solid. Alien 2, especially. Alien 3, not as much. But Alien 2, like, seriously, big thumbs up there. Really awesome. Loved all those characters. Some of my childhood heroes are these people and those people, and then later on we're told, oh, you're such an arrogant person, you can't understand. And it's like, no, I've nothing's changed. And it's just circular stupidity on their case. So yeah, no, I think your first, yeah, no, what's the second perspective?
Well, Notional points it out here. If the critics hate it, maybe it's actually good.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I mean, I'm going to point out this. I was just looking at this review from Vox, VOX.
Yeah.
Vox
VOX,
gave it a 30 out of 100.
And which is really shocking, because VOX, they usually are, they're usually in Disney's back pocket.
Right, but you have here where
quite literally sometimes.
It says The Rise of Skywalker falls somewhere between an overstuffed fan service finale and a yawn fest.
Yeah, because it
goes on to talk about all kinds, the typical excuses about, how everybody who hated The Last Jedi is racist or sexist. But anyway, I mean, and now I'm not saying this is necessarily the case, but it's really interesting to compare these scores to other critics' scores. Another, as I said, The Rise of Skywalker has a 53 on Metacritic. Another movie that has a 53 on Metacritic from the critics is Alita: Battle Angel.
Mm-hmm.
The user score, 86.
Mm-hmm.
Bright.
The same people who dislike Star Wars because of all the issues with it. It's not just singular; it's all the issues with it that dislike the last Star Wars movie. All loved Battlefield Alita, even though even though that there's the main actress has some similar ideologies and stuff like that. It's not the ideology. It's not. It really isn't. It's just whether or not it was good or not. And frankly, the last Star Wars movie was terrible. It took everything out and threw it in the blender and proceeded to just dump on it, create just pathetic, weak tropes. Like here's something that Hollywood doesn't like. Hollywood really, really hates this. This is one of the big things that got Lucas in trouble with the Hollywood-ish community, is that one of his lead characters was behind a mask. And that's not acceptable in Hollywood, because if you're behind a mask, how are you going to get the eternal praise and adulations of the masses when they don't see your face?
Yeah.
And the fact that he scored some people of questionable physical heritage in certain key positions was absolutely unacceptable at the time. And this is the disgustingness of this whole like racist commentary. It's disgusting. You look back
it's
in
not,
any of
and
the
it
19...
has nothing. The people who love that's just it. All of these elements that people are criticizing. Oh, people hate The Last Jedi because they're sexist or racist. These are the people who love the original trilogy. Leia was an amazing, kick-ass character.
Mm-hmm.
Lando, everybody loves Lando. It's ridiculous argument. It's just an excuse to.
Yeah.
I want to get off this so we're not
Well,
laboring it.
let me. You know how I love adding in like old quips of unique knowledge. There's one person that I would encourage everybody who wants to be a proper critic of Hollywood, like criticize what they do, how they do it, and how they work in it. There's one fellow in particular who stands out and who is a centerpiece of Hollywood, of the Hollywood understanding Hollywood just in general, and that's a guy named Jack Benny. Jack Benny did several firsts in Hollywood. Well, I mean, even before Hollywood, he was in vaudeville before there was a Hollywood, really. Then he was in radio before there was really like a Hollywood TV, and then he was one of the first people in TV, and he got so much pushback because he brought in all types of people onto his show and into his cast, and would created some of these most unique moments that we have. One of the first times a white character and a black character rode in the front seat of a car together. Like that was just not acceptable. That was a social faux pas that you just didn't do in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And he broke that. And he got criticized constantly for it. He got called names. He got called all kinds of stuff. But I mean, you just look into what this guy did and the tropes and the things that they would play on, and it was an insult to Hollywood. Everything that he did was in some way, shape, or form an insult against Hollywood, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And this is this character, this story behind this fellow is truly amazing.
Jack Benny is amazing.
Yeah, and it's just and the more you dig into it, the more you like really look into it, like his friendship with Rochester, and his friendship with not just Rochester, but his friendship with the Irish, and at the time when they were really not accepted in a lot of parts of the country. This was all stuff that he was doing, and people looked at him and called him, these Hollywood and Hollywood critics constantly gave him the rear end of the stick, and refused to treat him with respect until he basically was running like a lot. And as soon as they could, they tore down everything that he could, as much of the stuff that he could. And it took years for them to catch up to this kind of stuff. But this is the kind of fakeness that is Hollywood. So just always remember.
Yeah,
I don't want to rant on it too much, but that's the disgusting nature.
Fair enough. And I mean, and this kind of goes back to when we did our who profits from cyberpunk hate video. The point of that video was to point out everything is connected. There's no independent. I shouldn't say there's the big corporate media sites. They're all interconnected, owned by the same companies. Some websites own other websites, and they're connected to the people whose products they're reviewing, and it's just impossible. This is why independent media like YouTube is so important, and that's why if I want reviews on a movie, I'm going to my favorite creators.
And it's why YouTube will the spirit of YouTube will never go away. Not anymore.
Well, no, this is what people want.
YouTube might go away like the address, the site might change, but as soon as you remove the people's voice from YouTube, they'll just find their own.
Exactly. This is what people want.
Flare up overnight.
And like YouTube seems to want to become the new cable TV.
They want to be Apple TV. They want to be Apple TV. Yeah.
Anyway, no, you're right. This is not going anywhere. But yeah, so you see that discrepancy in Alita, where the audience loved it, even though the critics gave it a 53. Bright, the critics gave it a 29.
I can't wait for the new Bright that's coming out. I thought that I think that was one of Will Smith's best acting roles in a really long time, and that, I mean, I can't remember the actor who played the orc guy, but that phenomenal acting on his part. Again, I don't know, just because I haven't watched it in a really long time. But other aspects of it, brilliant storytelling, interesting ideas, turning things on its head. Totally cool. Love the fact that Joe Rogan was in it. That's really hilarious. Interviewing an orc. Oh god, that's so funny.
Well, but yeah, that's another classic discrepancy. The user score is 71.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a perfect movie, but it was really, really good. Joker, critics gave it a 59.
Oh, and I mean,
audience score,
at first, that's after a while. It was below 40.
Yeah,
It was around 40 for a really long time. And it was only after, again, like, oh, looks like the train's going this direction. Everybody get on. It's like, oh, okay. Then it changed. Then it shifted, and then it went north of 50. But it's like for a really long time, it was not, because that's not what people were acceptable. Oh yeah, Dave Chappelle, another good one.
Manny Calvera says Joker was a 9 out of 10 in my opinion, and that's what most people seem to think. The audience score there is 92 out of 100. So I look at this, and we see the critics giving the new Star Wars a score in the 50s, and it just makes me wonder: is this just the most terrible movie of all time, or is it? Are we going to be surprised that it's amazing? Probably not. It's probably just so bad that the critics can't even.
I like. So, I think JJ. I think he's a little overrated. We talked about this yesterday. I'm not a super fan of him, nor am I necessarily 100% against him. I just think that he has some interesting ways of coming. Rian Johnson, on the other hand, well, he's just one of the worst directors I could think of, especially now, because he seems to be bitten with something where it's like, oh no, we need to rebuild, every entertainment source. There's a couple of there's some people have pointed out that he doesn't think that Hollywood innovates anymore, so he wants to kill the past, and he wants to like take concepts and flush them down the toilet. It's like, that's wrong. That's just wrong. And again, you might say, well, didn't you just talk about innovation and indie and all that kind of stuff and coming up with new ideas when it comes to gaming? Yes, I did. Storytelling is not a part of that, though, because storytelling for humans has always been more or less the same thing, and has always revolved around several of these really core concepts to the human condition. And that if you try and ignore that too much, you just end up walking away from what makes something important for humans to study. And so storytelling is one of these things where it's like, yeah, you innovate on the story. You innovate in the way that you tell the story. You don't flush everything down the toilet. It's like there's a reason why the hero or the heroine's journey is so important to us culturally, and it's not, again, it's not a single culture. It's like the hero's journey archetype transcends every culture. There are certain stories that transcend all cultures. There's certain basic things that transcended all cultures that we can find, and that is when you know that there's something really important that the core of our persons are telling us that is important to us as people today. And these are things that some people want to do away with. And it's like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you'll discover that when you do that, you create something that's nonsensical, because the average person can't connect to it. Not only does it become nonsensical, it becomes weak. Doesn't mean that every story needs to follow the hero's journey. It just means that he's looking to innovate in the wrong way. Instead of trashing the entirety of Star Wars, maybe Ryan could have come up with a way of telling it in a better way, or telling it in a little bit of a new way, or telling it from a new perspective. what he did was he basically took it and made it so Hollywoody and so trashy and so useless that, and disregarded everything that made the story that he's ended up running it into the ground. And I hope I've done a decent job of explaining that, because this is not an easy thing to explain.
No, I think that makes sense.
It is
the original.
it's
You
a
look
topic
at the
it requires like 3 hours to really get
well,
into.
yeah, we can't get it. Yeah, we.
And so I'm just
Maybe
trying.
we should do maybe a video or a live stream on this sometime, because I spent a bunch of time this morning thinking about what is Star Wars, and why we love it, why it's captured the imagination of kids and adults for like 4 decades now. And I mean, because if you think about it, there has to be something that keeps us coming back after all of the painfully bad writing and acting and the really bad visual effects that got added into the original trilogy. There's something that keeps us coming back to Star Wars. You know, there's something beneath the surface there that really draws us.
Well, there's a I was thinking about this today. Actually not today, literally just now. I'm staring at the screen looking at the thumbnail that you put up, and I realized that the concept of a sword of light is a really old concept. It's a really old concept. It's been a popular, iconic concept for at least 2,000 years. And then before that, it's been an even older concept. And again, it's multicultural. The concept of a sword of light is something that you actually have in European lore, Chinese lore, Japanese lore, Korean lore, South Indian lore. I believe there's a couple of ones there. It's been a while since I've looked into that, but it's multiple places, and yeah, it's I believe there was even some South American things that kind of like weapons of light were a thing. And so I mean, again, it's not the sci-fi concept is good and is flashy and people will watch it for that, but it's the depth of story and actually coming up with a coherent, important moral story that's the important thing, and they don't have it there. They just have a lot of like they have a lot of fluff that equals not very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the lightsaber is a fantastic, like the way it's treated in the lore of Star Wars. It's not just laser sword. No. It is an elegant weapon from a more civilized age.
Yeah, and Polly's, you bring up a really good point in the comments here. He goes, Star Wars expanded universe / legends have so much good stories like the Old Republic period. It's the same potential to make movies and TV shows and video games. Don't understand why we can't get more of that. And this is, again, 100%.
Absolutely.
There is so much of the original expanded universe stuff that they put into a box and they kick down the stairs. And then she has the audacity to say, well, there's really no, lore in the form of novels and comics that we can actually refer to, unlike Marvel, where they get to refer to a bunch of content that's been around for a very long time. It's like my skin just crawled when I heard that.
It shows that the person at the helm does not know what they're talking about.
Has no concept of what this is in any way, shape, or form. And it's just like, oh my God, it gives me an actual headache. It really does. Yeah. It gives me an actual headache to hear her say this, because it's like, you can't be more wrong. Like you must know how wrong you are, do you not? You must know how insanely stupid that comment is.
Yeah. All right, we got to move on from that. Unfortunately, we could probably talk that for another hour, but
forever.
We have to move on. But it's not all bad news in the Star Wars world. Like I said, maybe more Jedi Fallen Order coming, that series. Plus, I mean, my wife and I have been watching The Mandalorian. It's pretty
it's
darn
decent.
good thus far.
I've heard nothing but positive things about it. And again, I just want to bring this up about the Mandalorian very quickly. I heard very distinctly that a bunch of Hollywood types were again. This is rumor and like take this as rumor, take this as a grain of salt. But this is a really interesting thing that I heard. I heard that there was a bunch of Hollywood people who were talking about the Mandalorian and how disgusted they were with the show because the guy never takes his helmet off. And are we all going to be forced to wear helmets? This is how self-absorbed these people are. Where it's like you can create a really good character and a really good story and a really good series, but you have to do it behind a mask. Oh, that's unacceptable. We refuse to do that. How dare you insinuate to us that we need to wear a mask in order to make a good... I need to show my beautiful face, sir. That's why I have a beautiful face. It's like, oh, it makes my skin crawl. By the way, I'm showing my face sometime soon, and then that's going to be pretty cool.
You've been saying that for 2 years.
This is true, but we seriously have something ready for this. So yeah, we'll be showing this sometime soon. So
all right,
can't wait.
Love seeing everybody so active in the live chat. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, we welcome you to join our Discord community. You can find the link in the description below, a place where you can talk with us and other Triple S community members about all the things we love to talk about, and to stay up to date about everything we're doing here at the Triple S League. And it really is a community, and it's a fantastic community. So click the link below to join and say hi to us in the welcome channel over there. Also, check out our affiliate link for Toink Toys. If you're looking for holiday gifts or anything for the nerdy person in your life, they've got great collectibles, costumes, games, and more there. Use the link in the description, and it helps to support the channel as well. Okay, so on to Cyberpunk stuff. No, you haven't missed the Cyberpunk news. Those of you who are talking about it, we spent the whole first hour here talking about Star Wars. In minor Cyberpunk-related news, the classic 1997 game Blade Runner, long thought lost to the annals of history, is suddenly made a re-emergence, and it's available on GOG, of all places. Good old games. So yeah, you can check it out there if you're interested. Apparently, I've never played it. I don't know much about it, but it's caused some chatter, including somebody posted about it on our Discord server.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an old game that's apparently quite good, and it's it's Blade Runner themed, which is of course it's connected to Cyberpunk in the sense that Blade Runner is a very cyberpunk concept, and Mad Queen told me once, for something to be considered cyberpunk, it has to feel like Blade Runner. So, there you go. Take that for what it's worth. But, so yeah, that's very interesting, and I kind of want to check it out, just because I'm very interested in sort of these vintage games, and especially the ones that have done well and withstood the test of time. But anyway, there's not a ton of Cyberpunk news, but we came across this article from WhatCulture, of all places. Once again, WhatCulture with the bring in the clickbait. I'll just put it out there. Now, I do, from time to time, enjoy WhatCulture's videos. Their YouTube channels I follow, and I do get some enjoyment out of their videos. Their articles I find bloated and clickbaity, and their website is terrible. But I do enjoy their videos, so I'm not saying, I don't know, I have a love-hate relationship with WhatCulture. But they have this article up called 8 Major Worries We Can't Shake, or Cyberpunk 2077, 8 Major Worries We Can't Shake, and the byline, the subtitle is Something's Not Lining Up. And this caught my attention because we addressed another WhatCulture article a while back that it had a very similar premise. And anyway, I showed it to Cyb, and you have some very strong opinions about these concerns that people are having. And it's just it seems to just be more evidence that this is just a ripe target for clickbait media to be saying, "Oh, this is going to be bad," because everybody's so hyped for this. So I mean, if you write, "Oh, we're worried about it because it might be terrible for this and this reason," I mean, you're going to get clicks, and I guess we're kind of falling victim to that. But we're going to go through it so you don't have to. Is it like the 10... Simon, 2 questions, Randall. Is it like 10 harsh cyberpunk gameplay truths? Is that what the other article was called? Can't really remember. Same amount of BS, probably. So, okay. Let's go through these. Cyber, are you still with me, by the way? Okay. I'm flying solo, apparently. He did say he might have to jet out for just a minute to deal with something at some point during the podcast. So I guess we will, we'll just fly solo until he gets back with us. Unfortunately, he wanted to, he really wanted to commentate on this, but he should be back right away. But anyway, the first one here, no third person. Now, this is the one where, I mean, on one hand it's been talked to death, but on the other hand, this one does have a nugget of truth to it. The no third person was a move that did draw a bunch of criticism towards CD Projekt Red, and it is somewhat justified. We're not going to...
Sorry, I'm back.
Okay, awesome. We're just talking about number 8 here, how it's no third person, and how it is... This is one that is somewhat justified.
Yeah. I mean, I especially have talked this to death.
And I mean, there's the motion sickness issue or simulation sickness issue that is definitely does affect a large, not a large but a significant percentage of the player base. But
it depends on the type of game. It depends on rate of motion, field of view, a couple other things. Motion sickness affects most people, actually. There are very, 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 very few people who cannot be forced into a form of motion sickness. Sometimes this has to do with being on a boat. Sometimes this can affect somebody in a car. Sometimes this can affect people who are prone to some other medical conditions. This will affect 95% of people when they're put into either a really extremely fast car, and like we're talking like 150 plus. We're talking extreme sports, extreme things. We're talking shuttles to space. Okay, this fighter jets, everything.
Well, sure.
This affects a good 95% of the population. It's just most people don't have a pilot's license, let alone have gotten into an F-16.
Right, but when we're talking about a video game,
we're
talking about
it gets pretty
sickness.
small. Yeah. So we're simulation. It has more to do with motion, the traditional motion sickness than simulation.
Well, the difference is that when you're playing a video game, you're not moving. It's that your eyes are seeing something, and there's a disconnect in your brain that's making you.
You get the same thing in other things. Anyway, I don't want to argue the semantics of it, but I do want to point out. So at least 5% of people will be affected by motion sickness through first-person games, at a minimum, as much as 15 to 20% to upwards to 35%, depending on the type of game. So if you remember, like some of those really, really old, terrible first-person games. Like the original Mario Kart caused people to have like seizures because it was so terrible. There was a couple other games where it was like more first person-y. Doom was pretty rough on people back in the day. There's a whole bunch of stuff that the very early concepts of it was just really, really bad. Now some gamers get used to it and they can get past it. And there are even third-person games that cause the same simulation sickness as well. Again, Mario Kart being a good example of that. But it's something that a lot of people can get over the minor stuff over, but some of those bigger hurdles, and that's why you have that 5 to usually it's about 20%. So that is a concern, and it's a big concern. It's also a concern for immersion. Now I say immersion, and they say immersion, and MXR says immersion, and we all have different interpretations of what immersion is, because immersion is not something that is tied to a singular perspective. It is defined by the individual. If I'm immersed by the most by doing something that's non-immersive to somebody else, that's just the way it is. And there's not really a universal constant for it in any way, shape, or form. You can argue some aspects of it, but really immersion is what gets the person immersified, and there's no universal standard for that, period. Some people are more immersed in watching Game of Thrones than they are in playing Skyrim, and that perspective changes drastically between those people. So I am worried about that, and I come back to the same point that I always make. I am not advocating for an only third person option. I'm advocating that more games who are trying to create storytelling should give us more options. I don't think that there should be a standard one, or even a standard, for sure, a standard, not one. I don't even think there should be two standards. I think there should be multiple standards. I was just going through updating my Skyrim again, mostly just for, I was bored and I was kind of at a writer's block. So basically looked at a bunch of bars loading for a really long time. Ended up having to throw the entire thing out. It was kind of funny. It was just too messed up. It's been too many years. So I had to throw it out, everything. But again, I went back to, and I looked at the immersive first person mod that's up on the Nexus. And there is really some things in that program that other people who want to actually create a quote unquote first person view, like this is miles ahead of any concept that you could have about first person whatever games. This is a true first person experience. You don't get that in most of the games that claim to offer you a first person view. And I will say that especially for Cyberpunk. It's my only negative. It's my only source of concern. It's my biggest source of concern, is that the first person view is not immersive, because it's not a real first person view. It's a generic first person cam. That's it. And I really, really wish that they would stop touting this stuff, because if it was a real immersive experience, then you should be able to look down at yourself and see the clothes that you're wearing. And I don't think you can do that. We've seen no evidence that that's the case.
We haven't seen that necessarily.
The floor,
but
it doesn't mean that it's not in there. But it's just again, if somebody's claiming it's for immersion's sake, they should be offering 2 to 3 different options for first person. Should be offering a standard one. They should be offering a more head tracking. Than they should be offering eye tracking. And that's probably, again, it's not that this stuff is hard. It's not. It's 100% not hard to make. This stuff was made with groundbreaking first person technology was made and put into Skyrim. That's almost a decade old now. So I'm pretty sure that somebody can find a way to mod it into or to take it to the next level, and just offering different levels, right? Giving you the option to create your own perspective or choose. It's again, it's not that hard. It's like which graphical option do you want? Do you want A, B, C, or D? And I think that that's what they need to do. So this is the only one, and the one that it ties into, which is number 3, that I will agree with. Pretty much everything else is
Hmm.
is not really is I would say clickbaity. I would say very clickbaity.
Well, even
But
this one, they
let's
don't
go through
really
them.
explain why they're bothered
Yeah.
by the first person. Other than, oh, we're barely going to be seeing. We're not going to be seeing a lot of the character's action, which I mean,
Mhm.
okay, if that's really what you're into, but I mean, for me, like, I do. I almost hesitate to bring. There are certain other. I think the immersion argument for the first person was not necessarily the best one for them to run with. There are other
And the fact that they put it down so low,
there
it's
are
like
other issues with, like, there's an
it's
argument to
like
be made that,
I
sometimes
would
if
have
you're
put
in,
that at one and like number one, and then number two would probably be number three, and number five would be number three.
yeah,
It's like
but I mean, just with first person, third person in
mhm.
general, there's an argument to be made that third person cameras have issues when you're in tight interiors.
Only again, only for the unimaginative or people who assume that the camera is always fixed.
No, no,
It's like
the Sekiro was a classic example of this entirely third person game, and there were points where the camera just got so confused during high action sequences that you could not see what was going on. And so, I mean, there's little things like that where
yeah,
I
yeah,
can see
which
the
means
issue,
that
but
they need to incorporate a better camera.
well, I agree. I don't know why. Like, I could imagine certain solutions to that problem, but
Mhm.
anyway, I'm just saying, like, there may be other reasons why they went with first person over third person. But anyway, I mean, let's just move on to so number 7 here. Their complaint is, where are the new gameplay mechanics? And to which I reply,
Do you
the
not
f you
see
say.
them?
Have
I
have
mean,
you been watching?
I guess it depends on what they mean by new gameplay mechanics. And I hear this a lot. I hear this a lot from snooty, moronic reviewers who have no conception of technology. You know, I played Super Mario Brothers. I played Doom, and there's just nothing new out there. Okay, it's all just a repeat of the same stuff from years ago when I was a kid. It's like you are so it's unimaginative to not to not be able to understand stuff on that level. But I mean, it's just generally it's like shake my head. I shake my head because it's just
This
why.
this paragraph really shows that they don't they have not been paying attention. The gaming industry has become inundated with safety this generation. Safe genres, safe mechanics, safe gameplay loops, things that made more money than ever but also drained it of the one thing a creative medium needs to stay relevant over time: risk.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, if you're going to tell me that this game is not taking any risks, you that's just proof you have not been paying any attention at all to this and are just scraping and reaching for things to complain about for your clickbait article. I'll give you a cookie if you could point to one, just one new game mechanic that hasn't been done before, is what they say here. Okay, look. What
Again,
what's your definition of a new gameplay mechanic? Are you saying something
they're
completely?
saying yes. That's what they're saying. Something that's so completely different. It has never ever been done in any other game before that I have played. That's what they're asking for. And first of all, that's stupid because every mechanic that you possibly dream of so far has been put into a game in some way, shape, or form for every type of game. There's a lot of games that have mechanics that are gameplay mechanics that were one-offs. That was like, hey, I've introduced this new mechanic because I thought it was cool, and everybody else does not understand what it is, where it's supposed to go, how it's supposed to work, or what it's supposed to do. And then other things, it's like, well, I mean, you know, like like what kind of new mechanics are you looking for? Because if you're looking at like seriously, I don't understand the question. It's so gosh darn stupid that it spins my head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's innovation is not just about coming up with a brand new element, but it's about improving and combining things in a certain way that people haven't seen before, and that we're going to be seeing that a ton. I think we're going to be seeing more verticality in this game than we've seen in a lot of in basically that's one of the elements that I feel is going to be something unlike what we're typically used to seeing. And that's the thing, like you said, it's like if you really search and scrape, like, can you find some game out there that's done everything that Cyberpunk is doing? You could probably find a game that's done each element in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you want to talk about verticalities? They had vertical levels in Super Mario Brothers 3.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they expanded to, you know, just doing vertical levels. Oh, it's verticality. That's nothing new. I mean, it's really being overly critical and overly technical. If you're going to tell me that there's nothing fresh and original about what you're seeing in the gameplay we've seen thus far, you're insane, in my opinion. Okay, number 6. Another 4-tier loot system. So this is referring to the tiers of loot that you can get, usually gray, green, blue, or purple, or some variation of those. Sometimes there's 5 tiers, but that's where you have like the, common, epic, legendary, whatever. Different games do it slightly differently, but it's looking like, there's going to be common loot, epic loot, rare loot, legendary loot, that kind of a thing. And according to this article, in gameplay terms, it means you're going to be going through the same acquisition loop over and over again. It's a wasteful way to play, forever hoovering up and discarding 10 times more gear than you keep, that kind of a thing. So that's what they're saying there.
So arrogant. So yeah, okay. So on this is a system that people really enjoy. I mean, MMOs and any kind of looter shooter is built off of this kind of concept. This and is it the perfect system for a permanent experience? Not really. MMOs that run for a decade or more definitely tend to run into problems with this and have to do resets over and over and over. I mean, WoW has gone through how many squishes to keep pushing down their content. There was a time where you started doing like 5 to 10 damage, and then there was a certain point in that game's history where you were doing billions or millions, or yeah, I think it was millions, and you're like trying to get to like 1 billion DPS or something like that. It's like, that's just ridiculous. Like, I mean, come on, let's be honest. That's just ridiculous. But that's just the way that these systems work. And while you wouldn't necessarily want to live in a world that has that kind of a system, because it would get tedious and it would get weird, and there's no way to like make that something that makes logical sense. You would want to, however, it is very enjoyable to play this kind of a world temporarily. And if somebody's on the dev side and is constantly tweaking things over a long period, over many of years of working, you could still live with the system. Like, they're saying, hey, you remember Diablo, and you remember all these like games, these MMOs that you played where you get stuff, and all these other looter games that are highly popular that everybody really enjoys, or not everybody, most people really enjoy and have done so for the last like 25, 30 years. Well, guess what? That's a dumb system. Ha! It's like, okay. Do you have a better system? Because I don't really see very many other options. There is the option where you have a set like height, right? And the items are pretty static, right? You got a slow power level gain, and then it kind of plateaus off, and then it stays there. That's a fine system. It works in a lot of like games that are more based around survival and like more realistic kind of stuff. I like all of those. Those are all really good, but those games have like really low level caps comparatively, and each level up isn't that much, you know. Um, so yeah, I understand the concept, but I shake my head and go, "You guys
Yeah, I
are."
mean, it's not like it doesn't work. I mean, that's why it is so prolific, is
I
because it
I
works.
really I really enjoy a good looter
Yeah,
game from time to time. I
I'm not
really
as
do get an itch for it.
I'm not as into the looter shooters, but this game is not going to be a looter shooter. So we can put that concern aside. If it's not going to be. I don't believe it's going to be this endless item grind. I think,
Hmm.
yeah, okay, you're going to have items of varying rarities, just like real life, perhaps. Except they're not in our real life world. They're not color coded. By the way, I saw an article somewhere. The rarest game system in the world. It's like from the Nintendo era, like the
Hmm.
original 8-bit era. Not original. 8-bit was actually the third generation of gaming consoles, by the way. But anyway, somewhere in that era, late 80s to early 90s, just sold for $1 million. Somebody bought it. I don't know. I don't know the details, but anyway. So yeah, there's item rarities in real life, and there's item rarities in this game. But one thing we do know is that they are looking for ways to allow you to customize the visual appearance of some of the items you have without altering the stats. So you're not just locked into, oh, okay, this item has really great stats that I like, but I think it looks like crap. Well, there's going to be stuff you can do about that.
Mm.
Speaking of innovative things, speaking of, and my webpage just froze up. Oh, there. Okay, no, there we go. All right, number 5. This next one, the dialogue seems bad. So, they start off saying, CD Projekt Red are clearly incredibly good writers, but the dialogue shown so far looks like an attempt to continue the faux stylized phrasing and notion of what cool is from the Cyberpunk books, which were written in the late 80s, published in
I,
late 80s, early 90s.
I want to know.
That's
I want to know. I want to know. Did they say the same thing about the tired, drawn, repetitive, and completely confined dialogue choices that were in Red Dead Redemption 2?
I was just
All I
thinking
can
that.
say is things that sound like somebody in some kind of, I don't know, old Western movie might say. You don't say. Could that have anything to do with, I don't know, the genre or the placement of the story? You absolute imbeciles.
Yeah, this is not our world. It's not just a future version of our world. It is based on an alternate timeline of our world.
It's literally painful
It, it's
it's literally painful. Like,
It's
oh,
yes, it's going to be very 80s inspired, hence the inclusion of the word punk in the title. So, yeah. There you go. So those are the first 4 major worries. Next one, number 4. V's character agency doesn't make sense. So, for as much as many fans are imagining Cyberpunk 2077 as something of a sci-fi Skyrim, the reality is that it has more in common with The Witcher, at least from what we've seen. By that I mean you're not playing a blank slate, designed from the ground up to be molded into any shape you please, personality-wise. Instead, while V can be customized in terms of weight, gender fluidity, and clothing, they will have a personality that comes through regardless.
again, how this is one of these things where it's like the idiots that are saying this do not understand the complexity of what they're demanding. They're demanding a system that is impossible to give. It is not possible, period, to give them what they're asking for. What they want is they want a V who they can, suggest or decide has a particular personality or character, or multiple voice sets that will then progressively get a little bit different, but not too different, but also not stay the same. They want the voice set to be unique enough that it's never been done before, that it's unique enough that every person has their own experience, and that it's cool enough that nobody is like put off by that. And they want a single voice actor or actress, or 24 of them, to be just create this within just like a few years, like just 2-3 years of development time, despite the fact that would take almost I don't know, probably closer to like 8 years of constant daily recording. Now, I've mentioned before, this technology is coming. I've seen the early prototypes, and it is very cool, where they simply capture a voice actor's style and tone and whatever, and then they're able to feed that into a program that creates the dialogue off the fly. And that technology is coming. This technology has been being designed for quite a while in assisting people who are mute, who rely on an audio speaker, as well as other things like driving tools and smart AIs and digital assistants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The technology is coming, and it has been for a really long time. It's not here yet. What they're asking for doesn't exist, and the ability to create it doesn't exist within the scope of reasonable intellect, of understanding what the game industry is capable of. These are the same people who are saying, hey, I want to explore an entire continent the size of North America that is a 1-to-1 scale of North America. And I don't want to walk into any buildings that are boring, empty, or, not cool. I want to be able to travel and just get instantly wherever I want to go, whilst not having to rely on the fact that it's a 1-to-1 scale of North America, or the world. Let's just include that. It's a 1-to-1 scale of the entire world, and you can walk into whatever building you want to. You're insane. Do you have any idea of, first of all, the pointlessness of that as a single player environment? The creating a world that big for a single player is moronically stupid. You just can't do it, for starters. You can't run it on any current systems, for starters. You could maybe run it on something similar to Stadia technology that's not completely broken like Stadia is. But what would the point of that single player experience be? Like, what would the point of? I can think of a few examples where it could work and where it could be very interesting, and they could tie in some stuff, and that's cool and whatnot. But you're asking for something that's insane, and they don't realize that they're asking for something that is insane and that doesn't function and that can't exist. And they're creating this clickbaity article to hammer CDPR on points that, again, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anywhere. And it certainly doesn't exist in the handful of projects that have kind of tried to emulate this, which there's a few of them. You're left with nothing but empty, desolate, boring buildings that don't have any actual presence of anything other than a few points of interest, which, strangely enough, is basically like normal life. The reason why things are smaller, more condensed, the reason why Skyrim is such a small world with so much going on so close to it, and so many points or flag other events and stuff that happen, and the reason why they have to do that is because real life is boring. If you stand out in the middle of a random field, you might see an animal or two in the course of a couple of days. You're not going to be entertained for hours on end by, first there was a lion that showed up, and then the lion chased this other like buffalo that showed up, and then the buffalo got trampled by this elephant, and then the elephant took on the lion, and then they jumped through this swoop of fire. It's like, this stuff doesn't happen. That's why real life is boring in comparison. And what they're asking for is, hey, give me real life in the context of having everything I ever want, but make it interesting. It's like, that you're asking for something that's impossible, and the arrogance of what you're asking for denotes that you don't know anything about the industry that you're talking about or critiquing. Ugh. That's kind of how I feel.
All right.
Notional, I think
one.
that's a great. Can't they just play Google Earth? Oh, brilliant, dude. Brilliant.
All right. Next one. Pointless visual customization. Now this ties into the third person, first person thing, and yes, it's this one kind of a valid complaint. I wouldn't call it a major worry in the sense that like I don't think it takes away from the game to give you like that they've added the visual customization in a first person game is still something they're adding. Like it's still a feature. It's not something they're now there's arguments to be made that this game should have been third person, of course, and we've already talked about that. We've talked about that way too many times over the past few years, but yeah, it does seem contradictory that you have all of this intense visual customization, but then you don't see it a lot. Now there will be reflections in game. There will be mirrors. There will be points where you see your character.
And again, we don't know this. I suspect because I haven't actually been able to confirm this. I think at some point it was on the list, but whether that list is completed the list or not, we don't know yet. I assume that when you look down at your character, you're not going to see much. Really, really immersive first-person stuff. Like I'm talking really immersive stuff. You can look down at your shoulder, your right shoulder, your left shoulder, straight down your chest. You can kind of like cooch and turn around and try and look at your backside a little bit, like people do, right? If I want to look at the back of my heels, I can, right? This is not something that you have in traditional first-person camera. So I do agree with them on this. And I think that they had these 2 points, maybe sort of 3, with the dialogue system. You can sort of make an argument for the dialogue system seems a little bit commonplace, but what you're asking for as a replacement doesn't exist, so you have to be happy with this because again we're not at that point. So it's a valid thing to bring up, but it's not a valid criticism. It's a good thing to say, hey, can we get the map bigger? Can we explore everything? Those are good questions to have at the industry that force the industry to come up with interesting solutions. It is not a valid criticism. I wasn't able to explore the entire world. I wanted to explore the entire world. What you mean, like the whole of Night City? No. I wanted to go to Illinois. I wanted to go to the North Pole. I wanted to go to the South Pole. I wanted to go to the Eye of Africa, or as some of us know, Atlantis. I want to go there. I want to see all this stuff. I want to just go to all over the entire world. Well, you can't because it's set in this one little area of Night City. You can't just go everywhere. Well, that's a reason that I'm not giving this I am deducting points off of my. It's like that is a stupid thing to say. It's a good question. It is an absolutely moronic complaint. It's a great question. It's like when you're when you're learning something and you're asking questions, when you're learning something and asking questions, there's no stupid questions. When you should know something and you state something that is moronic in the form of a question, that's when there's a stupid question. Because you're not asking to learn, or being refreshed, you're just asking something that has no viable answer other than you're an idiot. Please shut down. We're all stupider because of what you just said. Thanks a lot. And this again, good questions when you're asking an actual question. When you're positing, well, the dialogue system is bad. No, the dialogue system is normal for the industry. Well, that's bad. Well, there's not really anything other than that we can give. We can make it worse. We can make it one-sided. We can take away the protagonist's voice. We do a bunch of other things, but there's no other dialogue system that works, then here are your choices to respond. Well, I want more choices. Okay, well that's a valid thing, but is that all that you're saying? No, 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 no. I just want everything to be different. Okay. So again, that's not a question. That's a statement that this system is therefore inherently bad. The visual customization, I do agree with this one a little bit in the sense that, like, what's the point of dressing up if you can't see yourself? Now, again, we don't know because it hasn't been shown whether or not we look down at our body, do we see our body?
I would be very surprised if you did not, because
well,
of
there's
the
two different
emphasis on the immersion that they're talking about here. I think if you were to just look down at the floor and you're just floating above the floor, like that would break it. I don't think. I really doubt that they would let that happen.
Well, so there's a first-person games usually do this in one of two ways. They give you a limited scope in which you can look down. So you can look down in the sense that you're looking like you would be looking down, not wanting to see like your own body. So you're looking down, but you're not looking straight down. You're looking down and at a 90-degree angle or
45
more?
maybe. 90 degrees is looking straight ahead, but yeah.
Oh, sorry. I meant 45. Yeah, like
yeah, if they limit that, but still
45 to 60 degrees. So if you're looking at 45 to 60 degrees and that's your baseline, then yes, that's really annoying. And oh my god, do I hate that in games that I play. It's like, no, that in games where you can't look straight up, like there's a lot of shooters out there where you cannot look straight up, and you definitely cannot aim straight up.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Like they might
games that, like, why do they do this? Why do they remove the ability for you to look straight up instead of like giving you just this flexible thing, and you can kind of look, and you have a cone of vision that you can see around you, and it's like you're wearing literally, it's like you're wearing a dog cone on your head. This is your field of view. You are not allowed to look anywhere else. Well, can I look down? No. See, we put this cone out in front of you, and this invisible cone is going to field your field of view, and that's it. You can't look straight down, and you can't look straight up because both of those would just break the universe. So again, we don't know the answer to this one. If this is the case where you only have a 60-degree, not 90, only 60-degree angle of view looking down, and going up to maybe like 120, maybe a little bit more looking up, I will have severe criticisms for that. I will have severe criticism for that because I thought that the entire process of having a first-person only view, which is not inclusive at all, was done so that we wouldn't have immersion breaking things like, hey, can you reach me that book or that implant? Reach me that implant. It's right above your head. I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about, Ash. I cannot reach right above my head and look at something that's literally above my head. That is an impossibility. I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, this is the other thing to bring in. The other thing to bring into this, and this is another argument where I would say they are most definitely not going to do that, is that the verticality of the game.
Yeah.
This would mean you wouldn't be able to, look down from a ledge or look up at enemies that are way above you. And so I think that's not going to be an issue. I think,
and I really hope so. I really hope so. But the truth of it is we have not been given the answers because of the.
Well, we haven't seen. I'm making an inference.
Yes, and it's good. And I've been, and I don't want to. Our audience, guys, I'm not criticizing it because these features are. We don't know if these are in the game. I'm merely making jokes and pointing out the stupidity of if this is the system at which many other shooters have employed. Many other shooters give you a conal viewpoint. You cannot look straight up. You cannot look straight down. And there's a lot of games that do this.
Yeah.
And it's really dumb.
All right. Running a little short on time, so we got to run through these last two here.
Blast through.
The second to last one is that it's CD Projekt Red's first FPS. I mean, that's so generic that it's hardly even worth addressing. It's like, well, okay, it's their first FPS. every game company out there had a first FPS that they made.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean that it there's been some criticism from what we've seen of the shooting mechanics, and people have said, "Oh, it looks sluggish. It looks this or that." They've had their criticisms of what they've seen, and it might not be the best shooter ever. Probably won't be in terms, it probably won't have the best shooting mechanics that have ever existed, but it looks definitely passable, probably decent. And it's not primarily about the shooting, though. It's first and foremost an RPG. But still, I don't think the shooting in it is going to be bad either.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final one, the amount of patches and overhauls that The Witcher 3 needed. Okay.
Okay, like every other game ever. I don't know I mean, we're past the point long time ago where the company shipped a game in its entirety and they never put out a patch for it. I understand that there's some people who dislike this system and say, I really, really wish that companies would just make a game that they could push out and that there's no need to ever get a patch or an update or anything else for it. And I think this is stupid. I agree with you. You have a bit of a point there in how some companies definitely abuse this system, but are you also telling me you would never want an upgrade, a fix, or additional content to come out for something? Again, this is just simply it's just a new world. It's a new world of games. Yes, I understand the frustration, the difficulty, and the annoyance of companies that abuse this system, and there are a lot of companies that abuse this system. Looking at you, Bethesda. However, to expect or demand that no games ever allow themselves to improve is a little on the unhealthy side. I mean, it is something that is a little problematic as far as like logic goes. Again, I understand the frustration, the difficulty, all that stuff. I get that. I really, really, really do. But to demand that or to give again a criticism because hey, look, we're going to be getting updates for Cyberpunk 2077. Can you believe it? We're going to be getting updates and patches. This is unacceptable. It's like,
Yeah. There will be
universe, man.
There will be day one bugs, guaranteed. There will be issues.
Now again,
but there will
unlike Bethesda, don't make it so you can't complete the game or finish the game on the first patch.
Yeah.
Because it's just too much of a bug rattled mess. There's a difference between that and saying, hey, couple quality of life improvements, and we fix this one thing that if you happen to do this one thing in a really weird way, it would crash the game. We fixed that, so if you do that really weird thing, it's fine. It's not going to cause any problems. Again, this stuff is normal for the industry. I don't get why they're complaining about this. Yes, did The Witcher need updates, patches, overhauls, and stuff like that? Yeah, it was still a very good game. Did Skyrim need patches? Yes, the game was almost unplayable. I uninstalled it on release. It came out on release, and I said, "This is too buggy. This is an absolute piece of garbage. I'm not coming back to this for." I think it was almost a year by the time I came back. It was after the first DLC came out where I finally came back to it and went, "Oh, so much of the stuff is fixed. This is so much better." Now, does that
a year's worth of patches
No.
and then another and then 10 years worth of modding and then it was good.
Yeah. But again, some companies abuse this, but I don't think you can say that CDPR is
CDPR is
it's certainly not their intent.
They're very perfectionist. Let's put it that way. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be bugs. Yes, there are going to be bugs. There are going to be patches. There are going to be things that need to be fixed. But to worry about it I don't really understand what the point is. I mean, yes, okay, The Witcher 3. Bethesda, you've got a history of games releasing in a famously bugged state. With this one, you've got their first AAA game had a lot of bugs. Okay, well, let's cut them a little slack here.
I wouldn't. I don't consider The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 was not a AAA game. It was a AA game. It was what made them a AAA studio.
What was the well?
Witcher
AAA
3
comes down to the budget. What was the
Witcher 3 was not
budget?
AAA. The expansion Blood and Wine was.
Okay.
So pre-release or like right up to the release of Witcher 3, they were not a AAA studio. They did not have the budget for it. They didn't have what. Again, you can argue semantics when it comes to budgets. There's lots of AAA games that are made on shoestring budgets, so the budget doesn't necessarily denote "quote unquote" AAA. It's mostly you mostly approach it from the aspect of the studio. So does the studio have dedicated X number of people and that kind of stuff, and whatever.
Okay, well, that music means that it's time to wrap up the show. Yeah, so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, for the great conversation in the chat, for supporting this show by listening live or after the fact. Don't forget to slam that like button if you haven't already. We really appreciate that. And a special thanks to our Patreon supporters and our channel members who help to make this content possible. Our Big Damn Heroes on Patreon, Old Man Manson, 2 anonymous supporters at the Big Damn Hero level. Got a few others as well. We appreciate you all very much. Our channel members, Jason Cropper, Mr. Pazdziernik, Jer Schultz, Game Notes, Paul Young, Night City Punk, and Terror K. Don't forget to like, comment, and sub if you're watching this after the fact. And if you're listening on one of the audio-only platforms, don't forget you can join the live show Wednesdays and Saturdays, where you can interact with us and other listeners, be a part of the discussion. See the Discord server for exact time and schedule. The Augmented Reality Podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Ash. On behalf of Subsidian, thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you again very soon.